he is the author of my existence and he's the author of theirs. And he knows sometimes what he puts in them, sometimes all the time. He knows what he put in them more than I do. Even if I've been around them since whenever. He knows what he's put in them.
Enough.
And yet, yeah, but even more so, because the children are the future, he's put something in them that I may not even understand, because I'm today's child.
Yes.
They're tomorrow's, which means...
And I'm yesterday's.
So because they're tomorrow's
Past, present,
child...
and future, all in one. Allahu Akbar.
So, because they're tomorrow's child, that means that I need to connect with God in order for him to be able to allow me to see who they are. And that's why I always say, well, let's pray. Or I'm going to pray. I know, I'm going to pray on it. Pray. Allah he always gives me ideas. Always.
By Allah's grace and mercy. They used to have a show on the TV called The Tomorrow People.
Yeah.
And the Tomorrow People had special powers. And that is our children in truth. I know in Hollywood, on TV, they sometimes make it into some kind of little fantasy power and thing. But the truth is there, and they're giving us the truth, but they're feeding it to us in a way that it seems like some kind of fantasy. Our children are tomorrow's people, and they do have powers that we do not understand that must be tapped. Yesterday's children did not predict the powers that we have today, that we'll be able to speak to one another right the way across the world. You know, just by, doing Fajr Show TV. So we have to develop one another to know. We have to develop our next generation, our tomorrow's people, to know that there are things that they will do that we are not able to do, that they must develop and they must bring out and they must take it up to the next level. By Allah's grace and mercy.
And I'm a firm believer of just spending time, because I've always been blessed not to have to work. I mean, I went out to work for a period of time.
Plantation, you work very hard, sister.
Yeah,
get it right. Put it in context.
Thank you.
Sister works hard.
Yeah.
And her work don't finish 9 to 5.
Say it again, brother.
Her work don't finish 9 to 5, brother.
Say it again.
Her work don't. In fact, it start when sometimes 5 and continue all the way round. So you work very hard. So we have to be careful when we say, I don't work.
Yeah.
I'm a housewife. I don't work.
Please.
I couldn't do what you do.
Yeah.
I
know you couldn't.
Put my hand up. Me couldn't do what she does, by Allah's grace and mercy. And that's why it's a team effort.
Yeah.
That's why we have our roles. And that's why, brothers, when we step away from our wives and our families, we don't understand the damage that we're setting in place. We don't understand the setback that we're absolutely putting on not just the family, but the community and the whole nation.
Yeah.
We have to understand it.
And I'm a firm believer, because I've been blessed to be able to be around the children and stay around them, and be here when they come home from school, and when the older ones come home from school, and be here for the younger children. Like we have discussions, and that takes away a lot of the so-called discipline, the firm discipline that I have to do, because we have discussions. So if Jay, for example, does something that is not right, we go for a walk. It's not a big thing. It's just a point of discussion for that point in time. And,
yes, ma'am.
We have a discussion about it. And if she doesn't deal with it, then we find other ways of dealing with it. But it doesn't have to be huge issues. And I think that's where we go wrong. Because we're not around the children a lot, then what ends up happening is everything becomes a huge issue. And that's why I'll say, look, you know what? Come with me. And we'll just go for a walk. Just go for a walk and a talk. But going back to gold digging, and going back to every nation being given their own acts of devotion and their own natural resources, what the Caucasian in this society have done, in the West have done, is that they've gone particularly to the Congo when we were watching that show. What they did is they went to the Congo, worked with the leader, and with the legal people, with the government, and then got the government to outlaw hunting on their own land.
Come on, sister.
Now, what they did, me and Jay were watching it was so fascinating. They stopped the people from hunting on their own
the indigenous
natural
people.
On their own natural resource that was given to them by God. They outlawed it. And so what the people had to do was they had to go out to work. So what they did is, in the people being forbidden from learning how to cultivate their own land and serve their own people, what ended up happening is that they then built up the tourist industry.
Wow.
So in them building up the tourist industry, that means that the people in the Congo get used to serving people who don't even look like them in order for money. So they're looking at those people.
In order for a living.
Right.
A decent standard of life.
Right. So they're looking at those people. They're looking at particularly white people. They're looking at them as those who are feeding them, and they look at their brothers and sisters like we're all in the same boat. So we're not serving one another anymore. Right. So they're actually being trained how not to serve one another, and that's what education is, brothers and sisters. The root of education is us drawing the natural resource out of each of our children, so they can become servants of our own people and our nation.
So in that sense, in that same pattern, we have been taught not to educate our own children, but to look at the tourist industry, which is state school.
Exactly.
And to send our children to state school and to serve the state school in sending our children there.
Yeah.
So now we can't, when we see our, families, next door neighbours' children misbehaving, we're not going to teach them, because we're all separated from one another now. We'll curse them from behind the glass and look how they, she can't even look after the children properly and teach them properly. But we're not going to go and be a mother and a father to those outside of our own direct family to teach them and to show them and to build a community. Basically, that's what you're saying.
That's right. And I'll talk to all of the children. I don't mind. It's about my responsibility, because I know at the end of the day, I know that if I want my children to be treated properly, it means I've got to treat everybody else's children properly. Every child that comes into this household, they're my son and my daughter. No issues, no nothing. If you don't like it, don't bring them here. It's quite simple, because the same ways that I want my children to be treated, I'm going to treat your children as well, just the same. But then that means that it's important that I learn how to serve, I learn how to handle the children, I learn how to talk to them, so that when we have big issues, that they can see the difference between a big issue and something that's not a huge issue. Which is why we were talking about last night, we were talking about speaking firmly and shouting, you remember? And I was saying we don't shout, we speak firmly.
All praise is due to Allah. It's come to that time, sister. It's time for closing comment time, sister. So if you've got something you can close this off with, participation 2 of education, gold digging, now's the time.
Education, brothers and sisters, again, is about drawing out, not allowing somebody else who's unlike us to put in, but it's about us learning how to draw out. It's about us learning how to use the natural resources that we have, not only in the environment, but in one another. Who's another parent who has teenagers? Who's another parent who has small children? Connecting with one another and taking the best from one another in order for our children to get the best, so that they can go on and do better. That's part of the key to education as well. So may Allah bless us, brothers and sisters, to start learning how to gold dig wisely and for the betterment of our nation. As I leave you in the greeting words of peace, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. And we're clear.
Don't do your neck like that. I don't want you to do that with your neck. Don't do that. How come you don't do cut?